The first time I realized my marriage was a performance, I was standing behind a velvet curtain, holding a plate of shrimp skewers, sweating through my shirt while my wife practiced her big speech. Not to a mirror, not to a camera, to a live audience. See, it wasn't a dinner party. It wasn't even a real event, not the way I understood events. It was a live-streamed vulnerability experience. That's what Lisa called it. Raw, unscripted, authentic, she told her viewers. Even though I'd seen the bullet point script in her notebook. I wasn't supposed to be there. Technically, I wasn't even invited. She told me she needed space that night. Told me not to wait up. But I left my phone charger in her car and walked over. What I walked into was something else. Rows of people in folding chairs. Ring lights. 2 cameras. And my wife, sorry, brand storyteller, in a white jumpsuit, barefoot, standing in front of a giant canvas that said "Shed the Old Skin." I stood there like a ghost in a utility jacket, hiding behind the curtain, watching her talk about releasing limiting anchors and letting go of conditional love. She didn't say my name, but she didn't need to. She said, "Some people stay in your life just long enough to teach you what you don't deserve." The crowd snapped. Literal finger snaps. Someone even wiped away a tear. I just stood there holding shrimp. This wasn't a breakdown. This was a setup. A performance where I was the villain, and she got applause for surviving me. Later that night, when everyone left, she found me standing by the kitchen island. I asked her what all that was. She said, "Don't be dramatic. You're taking everything personally again." No apology. No explanation. Just an eye roll and a request for help lifting the ring lights into her trunk. She even said, "Can you not make tonight about you?" I slept in the laundry room that night, if that even counts as sleep. But that was the warning I should have taken. Because the next time she took the mic, she didn't just rewrite history. She tried to erase me from it entirely. And this time, everyone was watching. You'd think I would have left that night. After watching her stand on stage and basically describe me like I was an expired gym membership, she finally had the courage to cancel. You'd think that would have been my line in the sand. But no, I stayed. Like a spineless idiot. I carried her equipment out to the car. I said nothing while she joked with her friend Sienna about needing more of those releases before the retreat. I even got in the passenger seat when she tossed me the keys like I was her assistant, not her husband. The drive home was silent. She scrolled through her phone. I watched the trees blur past and tried to hold back the boiling feeling in my gut. When we pulled into the driveway, she looked up for the first time, sighed, and said, "If you're gonna sulk, do it in the garage. I've got content to edit." That's when I realized something truly sick. She didn't feel guilty. Not even slightly. What she did on stage wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a moment of vulnerability. It was calculated, prepped, rehearsed. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was a prop, a shadow, a stepping stone in her journey to become some self-anointed guru of truth healing. I didn't go to the garage. I didn't speak. I went upstairs, sat on the edge of our bed, and stared at the floor like it had answers. You ever do that? Just sit, so still it feels like if you breathe too loud, the whole thing might crack open? For days after, she acted like nothing happened. She even kissed me on the cheek while posting stories of her healing night, with captions like, "Real love doesn't beg for comfort. It creates space for truth." It was like watching someone slowly erase me in real time, pixel by pixel, post by post. Meanwhile, I folded her laundry and found receipts for $400 candles and sound bath experiences she never told me she booked. I started to snoop. I hated myself for it, but I had to know. Her texts were locked. Her calendar had entries labeled with vague crap like mirror work, 90 minutes, or boundary circle, invite only. I wasn't on any invite list anymore. I was just around, breathing in the same house. Then came the dinner. It was supposed to be small, just 6 people. Friends from her new community, most of whom had names that sounded more like healing crystals than humans. I was told to cook, smile, stay out of spiritual flow, and not mention politics, meat, or sarcasm. I did what I was told. I grilled eggplant like a hostage, poured wine like a waiter, and tried not to speak unless spoken to. And then, right as dessert was being served, she tapped her glass with her spoon. That same, practiced "can I have your attention" tap she used at her event. My stomach sank before she even opened her mouth. She stood. She smiled. And she said, I want to honor the people who've held space for me during this season of growth. And I want to share something that might be hard for some to hear. No, no, I thought. Not here. Not now. I've realized, she continued, placing her hand on her chest like some kind of enlightened statue, that my home has become a space of spiritual compromise. And in order to honor myself fully, I need to set a public intention. So, Corbin, I need to ask you something, in front of those who know how far I've come. My heart actually stopped. I swear it skipped 3 full beats. Can you either join me fully in this path, commit to radical truth, openness, and emotional expansion, or step away from this version of me completely? She said it like she was asking me to pass the salt, like this wasn't a direct execution in front of strangers. Every pair of eyes turned toward me, and just like that, I realized I'd been rehearsed into the finale of her act. Again, but this time, I didn't freeze. I didn't say a word. I pulled my keys out of my back pocket. I stood up slowly, and I said, calm, but loud enough to cut through the fake enlightenment air. Thank you for the performance. I placed my keys on the table, and I walked out, not just from the dinner, from the marriage, from the script, from the role I never signed up for. What I didn't know then was that she wasn't about to let me go quietly. The next phase of her act was war, and she was already rewriting the story, this time, with me as the villain she escaped from. I thought walking out of that dinner would be the end of it. I really believed that by leaving quietly, by not flipping the table or screaming like some broken man, I'd preserved what little dignity I had left. I should have known better. You don't leave someone like Lisa without consequences. Not when your silence interrupts her narrative. Within 48 hours, the post started. The first was a black and white photo of her crying. Fake tears, I'm guessing, because she always said, crying is a branding opportunity if you light it correctly. The caption? When you choose yourself, they call it betrayal. When you silence the pain, they call it peace. She didn't tag me, but every comment, every single one, was about me. Proud of you for walking away from toxicity. He never deserved your light. Men hate it when we stop mothering their emotions. It didn't stop. She started doing healing talks on live streams. In one of them, I watched her, from a burner account because she blocked me, say, some people confuse presence with partnership. Just because someone is physically next to you doesn't mean they're emotionally safe. I sat there on the floor, in my rented studio apartment that still smelled like paint and sadness, watching the woman I once shared a life with build an entire audience off my silence. She wasn't just moving on, she was repurposing me, turning our history into content, our marriage into episodes. And me? I was just some blurry, spineless silhouette in the background of her transformation arc. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight back. But anything I said would be twisted into more proof that I was controlling, defensive, unhealed. So I did what I always did. I stayed quiet, until I got a call from my sister. She said, hey, just a heads up. There's a podcast. Lisa's on it. You probably shouldn't listen, but you're going to want to. Of course I listened. And of course, she called me my past partner. She said I was unavailable, performative, and emotionally manipulative. That I weaponized silence. That I used stability as a leash. The host nodded like she was reciting scripture. And me? I sat there in a parked car, gripping the steering wheel, feeling the weight of 1,000 unsaid things crushing my chest. She didn't just leave me. She'd turned me into her villain, her cautionary tale. And no one knew the truth. Not yet. But that was going to change. If she wanted to turn this into a performance, fine. I could rewrite the ending. And the next act? Wouldn't be one she could control. By the time the second podcast episode dropped, the one where she claimed I once monitored her breathing to regulate her spiritual energy, whatever that even means, I realized something important. Lisa wasn't going to stop until I became a full-blown character in her fantasy. A symbol, a faceless, voiceless example of male fragility. And while I'd been quiet up to that point, hoping she'd just move on and let the dust settle, something inside me finally cracked. I wasn't angry. I was awake. Because I still had something she didn't expect, the receipts. Not literal receipts, though I did keep some of those too, but real things. Voice messages, screenshots, a full email thread where she begged me to pretend we were still happily married while she pitched a reality series about healing as a couple. Texts where she said things like, I need your quiet energy for balance, and just don't post anything until the brand is stable. I had her original outlines for speeches, including the one she delivered the night she ambushed me at dinner. Word for word. I had the timestamps, and I still hadn't said a word. But now, I was done protecting her image at the expense of my own reality. I didn't want revenge, not the way movies show it. I didn't want to destroy her. I just wanted truth. And if she was brave enough to weaponize half-stories in public, then she'd have to deal with the full version eventually. I didn't start with a big expose. That's not my style. I started small. I emailed her, just 3 lines. You don't get to rewrite me without my permission. I suggest you stop using our marriage for content. You know I have everything. She didn't respond. But 12 hours later, she deleted 4 posts. 3 Instagram stories disappeared. Her pinned podcast episode got archived due to licensing conflicts. And suddenly, her entire brand went a little quieter. She underestimated me. Again. And she really shouldn't have. Because while she was chasing hashtags and sound baths, I was watching everything fall apart behind her, faster than she knew. See, there's something Lisa forgot in all this. Something dangerous. I never had to lie to win people over. But she did. And one person she hurt along the way was about to stop covering for her. Someone very close to her. Someone she never thought I'd find. The woman who finally broke the silence wasn't someone I expected. Her name was Jules, short for Julietta, and she had been Lisa's closest collaborator since before the transformation era. I remembered her from early dinners, back when Lisa still spoke to me like I was a human being. Jules always seemed like the most grounded of the group, but I hadn't seen her in over a year. Then, suddenly, I got a DM. Hey, not sure if you remember me, but I think we need to talk. I'm done covering for her. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before responding. I didn't want to get my hopes up. I'd been alone in this mess for so long that the idea of someone finally validating my reality almost felt unreal. But I agreed to meet. We sat in the corner of a dusty tea shop where no one would recognize either of us. She looked tired. Not in the I didn't sleep kind of way. Tired like someone who'd been part of a lie for too long and finally wanted to breathe clean air again. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. She used you, she said, stirring a cup of licorice root something. Not just emotionally. Strategically. Your silence gave her permission to spin the story any way she wanted. I told her I knew that already. She shook her head. No, you don't know the half of it. Over the next hour, she laid it out. Every campaign, every podcast talking point. Lisa had been crafting the liberated woman escaping emotional oppression brand long before our marriage ended. According to Jules, she had mock-ups of merchandise months before the dinner party ambush. Hoodies with phrases like, truth isn't always gentle, and choose growth, not him. And the worst part? The book. She was writing a book. A memoir. And I was the antagonist. Jules pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of the draft title page. Right there, in bold serif font. Let me go. How I reclaimed myself from a quiet marriage. I felt the blood drain from my face. Corbin, she said gently. She's going to make a career off your silence unless you do something. I didn't speak for a long time. Just stared at that screen. Because I wasn't just fighting against some twisted narrative anymore. I was now a character being immortalized in her origin story. And no one was going to ask me what really happened. Until now. Jules leaned in and said, she thinks you're too passive to defend yourself. That's what she tells people. But I think she forgot you were watching. I think you're more dangerous than she ever realized, because you've been paying attention. For the first time in months, I felt something unfamiliar. Not rage. Not grief. Clarity. I wasn't going to scream or launch some online crusade. I was going to pull a single thread, the one she never expected anyone to touch. And when it unraveled, her whole brand would come down with it. Because behind every fake guru is a truth they hope never surfaces. And I had just found mine. I didn't need to go nuclear. I didn't need to scream or expose her in some grand public meltdown. That would have only fed her narrative, given her more content to spin into new trauma. What I needed was precision. Something simple, undeniable, and quiet enough that it would knock the wind out of her before she even knew where the hit came from. That opportunity came faster than I expected. Lisa had always been obsessed with verification. Not emotional verification, no. She didn't care about being understood. I'm talking about digital validation. Blue check marks. Brand deals. Legacy media attention. That was her fuel. She wanted to be seen as a rising authority in emotional sovereignty. Her words, not mine. And recently, she'd started teasing a TEDx talk. She hadn't officially announced it, but Jules confirmed it was coming, and that she was about to finalize the pitch deck. So I asked Jules for one thing. Just one. The original outline. She sent it that night. And there it was. A carefully crafted script claiming she had spent years in an emotionally restrictive marriage where her voice was silenced and her expression was policed. She wrote about how her partner used manipulative silence as a form of punishment. I was shocked at how confident she was in rewriting everything. But that's the thing with people like Lisa. They don't expect to be challenged because they curate their lives like galleries. They forget reality has receipts. So I sent an email. Not to her. Not to her followers. To the TEDx organizers. I wrote calmly, politely, and attached what I had. Time-stamped videos of her asking me to not share our issues publicly so she could maintain her brand's coherence. Voice notes where she thanked me for giving her the emotional space to reinvent freely. Even the text where she begged me not to leave after the dinner party, saying, "We can still frame this the right way. Please don't ruin the momentum." I didn't accuse. I didn't rant. I simply asked the organizers to consider the full context of who they were platforming, and whether her story was rooted in actual abuse or just a profitable distortion of a quiet man who never fought back. 3 days later, I got a reply. "Thank you for your message. We are pausing the review process while we verify the details provided." 2 days after that, Lisa posted a black square with a vague caption about delays due to internal misalignment. Her followers flooded the comments with sympathy. But something had shifted. She wasn't in control anymore. Not completely. And she knew it. The next day, I got a text from her for the first time since I left. No greeting. No apology. Just 5 words. "What the hell did you do?" I stared at that message for a long time. And then I typed. I answered a question you never asked. I hit send. And in that moment, for the first time since she took the mic, I finally felt heard. But the story wasn't over yet. Because Lisa still had one last card to play. And it was more desperate than I ever imagined. After my message, things went eerily quiet. No more podcasts. No live streams. Just curated silence. The kind she used to accuse me of. Now suddenly her own weapon. But silence, in her world, isn't surrender. It's strategy. I knew she was planning something. I just didn't expect it to hit this fast. It started with a text to my sister, not to me. She wrote, "I'm worried about Corbin. He's acting unstable, and I fear he might spiral. Please check on him." My sister called me immediately, panicked. I had to talk her down for 15 minutes before she understood Lisa was planting doubt, not reaching out. And that was just the beginning. That same night, I started getting messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old college friends, former coworkers, even my ex-roommate from a decade ago. They were all confused, some awkward, some sympathetic, asking if everything was okay. Apparently, Lisa had privately told them I was having a mental health crisis triggered by her success. She didn't say it publicly. She wasn't stupid, but she whispered it just loudly enough to echo. That was her final move. If she couldn't erase me quietly, she'd discredit me gently, reframe me as the fragile ex who couldn't handle her growth. No confrontation, no accusations, just the subtle suggestion that I wasn't well. The kind of whisper that follows a man for years. I was livid. Not for myself. I'd already survived worse. But because she weaponized the one thing I thought she'd never touch. Vulnerability. The same vulnerability she used as currency, she now turned against me. It was a perfect trap. If I defended myself, I was overreacting. If I stayed quiet, I was confirming it. She thought she'd won. But she didn't know I wasn't alone anymore. Jules, still furious, still watching, had kept everything. Voice notes. Screenshots. Messages where Lisa bragged about how controlling the narrative is more powerful than speaking the truth. Proof that this entire spiral she was spinning had been drafted in the margins of her journals like plot points. Jules sent them to me. All of it. And I didn't post it. I sent it to the same people Lisa had contacted. One by one. With no commentary. Just timestamps and context. No spin. No anger. Just the raw material Lisa never thought anyone else had access to. I didn't have to explain anything. They saw it. The calls stopped. The sympathy dried up. The silence this time, it wasn't curated. It was earned. The mask had slipped. And behind it wasn't a broken woman rebuilding herself. It was someone who had built a temple out of lies and finally ran out of bricks. But the story still wasn't finished, because what came next was something even I hadn't planned for, and it changed everything. A month passed. I didn't check her pages. I didn't ask Jules for updates. I didn't dig for reactions. For once, I let the silence be mine. Not weaponized, not defensive, just quiet. For healing, I moved into a place with real sunlight. I fixed the squeaky window I used to complain about. I stopped tiptoeing through life, terrified that the next step would trigger another public performance at my expense. Then one afternoon, I got a text from Jules. Just a link. No context. It was a live stream. Lisa. Her face looked different. Not softer. Not broken. Just unmasked. The light she always flooded herself with was gone. No filters. No ambient music. No fake affirmations. Just her. Alone. And then she said something I never thought I'd hear. I need to clarify something. A lot has been said, and I've let people believe things that weren't accurate. That's on me. Not everything I shared came from truth. Some came from fear. And someone I loved deserved better than that. No names. No direct apology. But that wasn't the point. She admitted it. And this time, no one applauded. The comments were quiet. Some confused. Some disappointed. But the shift had happened. Her power over the narrative had cracked. Not because I destroyed her, but because I refused to let her destroy me. And somehow, that was enough. I didn't text her. I didn't gloat. I just stood in my small kitchen, next to a toaster I actually bought for myself, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. A few weeks later, I bumped into someone at a local event. A woman named Mara. She worked with one of the organizers from the TEDx group. We started talking about music, then books, then how exhausting it is to keep explaining yourself to people who only want to hear one version of you. She didn't ask about Lisa. She didn't know me from a podcast, or a reel, or a curated breakdown. She just laughed at my bad joke about quinoa, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a cautionary tale. I felt like a person. We had coffee the next day, and I didn't feel the need to rehearse who I was. I just showed up. Quiet. Honest. Enough.